Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Christian Benjamin here with me today. How you doing, Christian?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be here with you tonight.
Absolutely, man. I'm happy to have you in the building. Excited to learn your story right here in front of everybody, because this is what we do here at America's Next Motivator. I want to say hi to everybody who's tuning in, whether it be on Apple TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Android TV, Facebook, or YouTube. I appreciate you. And let's have a great time tonight. Let's get right into it. Christian, where you from?
Man, I'm from the PG County, the great PG County, home Kevin Durant and a lot of greatness, including ourselves. But yeah, PG County, born and raised. I lived in Palmer Park, Maryland. If anybody knows PG County area, Palmer Park, Seabrook, Lanham, Riverdale. I kind of moved around a little bit, but that's my home, right outside of DC. If you're from outside of the area, we call it the area with a U.
Right.
DC, Maryland, and Virginia, tight knit. We call it the DMV. So if you're from Cali or New York or Florida or something, I'm from the DMV.
You know, I've met some very intelligent people from PG County, specifically from that whole DMV area. Y'all have some very unique people out there in a sense of outlook, personal esteem. You know, there's some very brilliant individuals that are from that particular area. Can you talk to me about what it was like for you growing up there?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that a lot of people don't know, including us growing up, is that Prince George's County is the wealthiest, predominantly African-American county in the nation.
Okay.
So when you don't grow up with that type of wealth, that's something you don't know, but it's a predominantly African-American county. So it's the wealthiest in the nation, but my experience maybe wasn't with that tax bracket,
Right.
But I think that's why a lot of growing up still, you see, when you hear about, not to take it too far back, but you hear about Tulsa back in the 20s and things like that. So growing up, the business owners that are African American, the teachers are Black, the people doing good, bad, and in between are Black, right? So
Let me ask you something. Would you say that Prince George's County has been an affluent area for like 100 years?
Not 100 years. I compared it to Tulsa because I know Tulsa was built entirely by African Americans. It was burned down by through the racial wars. But predominantly, every business owner, all the doctors were Black, everything was Black, and so that's what I knew growing up. I didn't know the world. I didn't really fully understand why I was called a minority until I went to college. I just felt like everybody was Black. Everywhere you went was Black. That's what it was.
Wow. So you grew up thinking that you were the majority.
Exactly. Like I knew we were the minority, but it didn't feel that way. That I didn't understand what that word fully meant. Like my father's from 15 minutes from where I grew up. Like DC is the line, right? Okay. They call DC Chocolate City my whole life until now, right? So it's like, what are you saying? It's just us.
Did you learn in school that African Americans were the minority at the same time you felt like the majority? Were you learning that you were the minority?
We were taught that. I'm 39 years old. I have to age myself, but I'm 39 years old. So I grew up when I'm in elementary school, we have the OJ case going on. We have the wars and the race wars in LA. The riots. All those different things. So what's happening. There was a lot of this that people don't know is that Prince George's County in the year 99, when I was a junior in high school, they had a front page 5-part series Washington Post article because we were the number one, I don't know what you would call it, but police shootings. You know how that's a big topic now?
Okay.
I was used to that. I was used to that story, like police shooting unarmed African-American boys. That we were the number one in the nation for that occurring. So they had a 5-part series in the Washington Post because of that.
I find it, I'm drawing a parallel between PG County, one of the most affluent areas of African Americans in the country, and at the same time, so many situations where police are killing or committing brutality that there's a 5-part series in the area where African Americans are doing so well. It's so
Crazy, right?
many instances. Yeah.
What you're used to really doesn't really move you until you understand that you start to realize it's not normal. It's not supposed to be normal. So these stories, until maybe even 10 years ago, when this really, social media came up front and we start talking about the Trayvon Martin and the different things that's been going on, I thought it was kind of normal that people knew this was going on. Like, I was so used to it growing up. I'm like, well, everybody knows that there's been a secret war on young Black boys and different things happening. And I have people that I knew that were murdered when I was in high school that were unarmed or not the person they were looking for.
By the police?
By the police, yeah. There's some big names out there. Johnny Crocker's last case was from a student from my high school that I was friends with. That was his last case before he passed away.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm
Google it. Gary Hopkins Jr., one of the coolest dudes I ever met in my life.
You went to school with him?
Mm-hmm. Duval High School in PG County.
Was he a dangerous person?
Oh man, he was.
Be honest. Was he dangerous?
I'm gonna keep it all the way 100. I'm gonna be honest with you. He was one of the coolest dudes I've ever met in my whole life. I was maybe 16, 17 when he passed. He passed in front of half our school. Everybody was at a party. There was a fight. He broke it up because he had a lot of clout back then. He used to rap. Everybody thought he was gonna get signed. He was really cool. He was friends with everybody. He had no beef really. So he was the only one that could break up the fight. And when the police ran and they shot him in the chest in front of a lot of students in our school, and he died in front of half of our school. So when everybody came to school the next morning, crying, tears, it was the craziest story.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to, first of all, be a member of the show today by making comments in the chat, drop emojis in the chat, like the video, share the video. Let's circulate this. Get somebody else in here for this conversation because obviously Christian Benjamin, in an alternate world, he could not be here today.
Right.
And
I have a real story about that. Not even to cut you. Real story. One day, I always think about this, right? Because your life can flash in a moment. I remember I was 15 years old. I lost my keys. I used to live I could get into my house by the back door, right? I'm in there knocking on my door, trying to get in the back door. I was, I didn't tell my parents were gone. I just got out of school. I'm pulling the door, I'm looking in. I'm like, man, how do I get in? You're just a kid trying to figure out. Yeah. I'll never forget this. I heard, I can't remember the exact words, but a police officer screamed at me. I turned around real fast because imagine somebody you don't know, you're in your backyard. I turned around, had guns in my face, surrounded. Now I turned around real fast. Imagine if, it just they startled me, I startled them. But they were police surrounding me with guns. I was 15 years old. I'll never forget that. Like one false, I always felt like God because I turned around so fast, they could have, they could have just shot. But they had guns pulled out and everything. They walked me to my front. They were surrounding my whole neighborhood. They said somebody said you were breaking it. I grew up in that neighborhood. Like it was crazy. I was like, man, I think about it because I'm like, I was 15. I don't really. I was still a young boy. I was just trying to get in my back door, and there were guns drawn on me, and with an itchy trigger finger, with the PG County police. And I turned around so fast that I didn't even have time to register that, put your hands up slow. I just had turned around real fast with my book bag. I just always think about that when I saw what happened to some of my peers.
You have felt persecuted in America.
Absolutely.
What was your relationship like with your parents?
My relationship with my parents was really good. With my dad, it was 50-50 growing up, but it was more dad stuff. My dad was very strict. My dad was a preacher. He's still a preacher to this day. My dad's a reverend. So that saved my life, to be honest with you. It's something I hated growing up, being what we call dragged to church every single Sunday, your friends hanging out. Everybody used to get on me, right? It's funny, right? Everybody used to get on me because my dad was the one that's like, man, I don't want you sleeping around with all these girls. I don't want you doing this. I don't want you doing that. But you got to think about where the community, the culture I'm from, men, we used to say that's not what men are supposed to tell you. So people used to say, man, your dad's weird. Matter of fact, a lot of my friends didn't have fathers. But you have the uncles coming, man, I'm going to take you to do this. I'm going to take you to do that. So I despise that growing up. But I will tell you this. Today, all my friends that are still around, they support my dad. They go, when he go into the shelter, they say, man, he was like a dad to me because that's the man I saw do these positive things. So my dad and our relationship was slightly strained because I was wilding out in high school when I got a little older. My mother and I were like two peas in a pod. That was my best friend. We hung out late at night playing video games. My mother was the first person. She introduced me to Madden. right? Like she was playing Madden and introduced me to it and got mad when I messed up her team. You know what I mean? That was the one argument we had. So it was funny. It was a great relationship growing up.
So your dad was telling you, don't go out here dealing with all types of women.
Exactly.
Carry yourself with more. What he was teaching you with dignity. He was telling you carry yourself with more dignity, and you were wondering like, wow, this is different from what the average, what the typical man would say, because you know the typical man is gonna say go out and have as much fun as you can.
We young. I thought it was corny. I thought he was too strict, and he wasn't as strict as what I've heard. Now that I'm an adult, I've heard stories. But to me, if I can't go to this party or I can't dress like this, I mean, you know, I can't do this, or we're arguing about grades. At the end of the day, look, man, I was bringing home 2.0s, but I was outscoring the school. I was busted differently. Like you talked about my upbringing, I scored so high, I was bused to schools outside of our neighborhood. You know, where now I started to feel like a minority because when they were all white. You know what I mean? The smart schools were all white. Right. So my dad was telling me the right thing. I wasn't taking it in.
Your father was telling you one of the most important things that a young man can be told.
Absolutely.
One of the most important things that a young man can be told is how to take care of himself, how to carry himself, how to preserve himself. You know, it is different from what so many men perpetrate to the younger man. And I just find it interesting that, you know, he knew you. He knew your nature. He knew what to say to you. And he wasn't concerned about being your friend. He was concerned about being your structure.
Exactly. Let me tell you this. He is not just about what he said, it's about what he did. Right? Because at the end of the day, I never saw him say a curse word to anybody. I never saw him do something that he told me not to do, ever in my entire life. I never saw him. When I was with him, he used to take me to the juvie centers back when you could do that. Lorton Prison, that's closed down now, I think. But he would take me to the jails and the homeless shelters with him growing up. And while he would preach to these men, and he would go preach to the boys. And I was 16. I used to have friends in the juvenile detention center from our neighborhood. He would take me there, preach to them, and then ask me to speak. Like, say something to them. These are my peers at the time. This is a little.
You know these people. Yeah.
I'm like, yo, you know, whether you know them or not, they're still your peer. It's like, yo, this is my dudes. Or dudes I would know if they were out on the street, right? And I know what neighborhood they from. But when you talk to them, and that was my first experience of people coming up to me like, bro, you playing football in high school? You doing this, bro? I want to do that when I get out. Like, that was my first experience of serving, of doing those things. It was with my dad. So I always say, you know, it's, you know, with the social media era now and the things we're doing, I get celebrated a lot for helping the community and doing these things. I'm like, man, I'm not a tenth of what my dad was doing. He just didn't have the social media era to show what he was doing. It all comes from him. Right.
What was elementary school like for you?
Elementary school was very interesting because, like I said, that was a life-changing thing. It helped me to this day, right? And around the 4th grade, I was deemed as talented and gifted and all those things. So they bussed me out of my neighborhood to a different school that they called a Montessori school. Okay. So I'm gonna tell you something that was natural coming from a kid, but is a strong statement. I remember sitting in class one day and being told, he's always told, man, you go to the smart school. You go to the smartest school around. You go to the smart school. Think about all your life. When you go to the regular schools, you with people that look like you. Now you go to the smart school, nobody looks like you. So I remember asking my mom, man, just offhand, like, are all white people smart? Because are white people smarter than black people? Because when you go to the dumb school, the regular schools, it was everybody looked like you. Now they bust me to the smart school where they're teaching you different and they're taking you on trips and things like that. But when you look around, nobody looks like you. There might be one other person that looks like you in your class. So it internalized things that I didn't know I had in terms of, one, how to communicate with a lot of different types of people, but then even issues that I had with my own self-awareness and self-reflection, because I hated coming back to the neighborhood with a big book bag on and talking different, right? It felt weird.
So when you got placed in an environment which people call the smart school, it kind of gave you an inferiority complex.
Exactly.
A little bit. And you know, that's a big challenge, man. That's powerful. And I think that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
That when you go into the smart school, you drawing the contrast. You're like, well, how is this all white people here and I'm black here and this is the smart school? So what was all my friends and family back,
Exactly.
back in my neighborhood?
Exactly.
And then you coming back feeling like, hey, y'all, I was over there, but now I'm back here now, and let's all mix it the same way. And some of your people had to been telling you, no, I don't mix the same way no more because
culturally it was too different for me.
Right.
So I was able to make a lot of my own decisions based on our life, growing up. It's a little different. So I was manipulating my own situation a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I was supposed to go to the high school equivalent of that, right? When I was in the 8th grade, I failed the test on purpose because I knew I would pass, so it could so they would send me to my neighborhood school. That's how I ended up going back to the school with my friends in the neighborhood the rest of my life. I mean, well, going up my formative years in high school because I didn't want to have that experience anymore.
Yeah, you wanted that camaraderie with your people back in your neighborhood. I
try to tell parents all the time, right? I say, as adults, all we talk about is standing out. Look at this job I have. Look at this car I have. But think about kids. Think about when you have a nicer car than everybody. They say, drop me off at the corner. I want to walk. Because all you want to do as a kid is fit in. So with our adult minds that are fully formed, we're like, why doesn't our child do this? Why doesn't our child listen here or want to stand out here? Because a kid wants to fit in. They want to feel culturally accepted. They want to have friends. If it was between having a great grades and having people say nice things to them in school, they would pick people saying nice things to them in school. That's or right. In the neighborhood or different things like that. So I think that's a way to form that you can actually have both, but a child has to feel, I guess you have to know that that world exists out there, that culture exists, and with different ways. Not saying my parents did anything wrong, but there's elements that I see with young people out here that I'm like, I understand how that could feel and why they're fitting in. And you say, man, you're smart. Why are you acting like that? Well, there's a reason, because when you act like that, you have friends.
Right. You also raise another important issue, which is we need to continue to overhaul our educational system, in America. A lot of respect to people who are doing the best they can out there, teachers and administrators who are doing a great job in legacy work around the country. But, it has to change when you got the good schools over there, the smart schools over there, and not necessarily in PG County. I would think, in an ideal world, some of the best schools for African-American children should be right there in PG County. And I'm not just talking about 3 or 4. It should be a whole lot of them.
Yeah. Well, the school I went to was in PG County, but it was in a different part. So PG County is predominantly Black, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have its different elements, right? And so it was really a unique experience that in one way, because I don't believe every experience, even negative ones, grow you up. It helped me be able to learn how to communicate with different people, because at the end of the day, I still had friends at that school too. Right. Like it wasn't just like I was walking around. I became friends with Jewish kids. I didn't know anything about Ramadan or bar mitzvahs. I was going to those things out of my neighborhood, which I also contribute to making me into someone who can connect with a lot of people authentically. I don't have to fake to be in any room. I could be in the worst jail cell talking to somebody and helping them out, and I can be in the highest, most prestigious position, and I'm still fitting in because I'm being me. It's really me naturally, right? And I think that was based on the melting pot that I was put in growing up. Maybe not accidentally, but culturally, mental pot that wasn't the intention.
So as all of this came together, and you are pretty much moving through middle school. Mm-hmm. How did your life begin to change? You wanted to go to high school with your friends from back in your neighborhood. Yeah. What's going on in your life as you transition from middle school to high school?
Yeah, it was an interesting transition. That's when I picked up sports. Sports really carried me a lot throughout the rest of my kind of formative years in high school and college. Yeah, I picked up football, became really good at football. So that became something that I always tell people, when you're good in sports, when we're from, you become like, you're the guy, right? Now everybody likes you. Now it don't matter if you carry that big book bag or you talk a little different, right? Now it's like, you know what? You're the man. You can kill on the field. So I found sports as my way to kind of get back into who I kind of wanted to be, or who the friendships I wanted to have and forming that. But behind the scenes, I was developing some habits that I only broke recently, right? Because what I've learned is your child self sometimes controls your adult self. So I was hiding a lot of pain, a lot of struggles that were going on. So as those things were going on and life was picking up, I had more friends. I became cooler, more self-aware. I was getting bigger, right? You know, you're getting strong, you're looking like something, you're dressing, you got some Jordans on or something. But my mother was getting very, very sick, and I had to take care of her a lot. From the time I was in the 8th grade until actually my sophomore year, my freshman year of college, we'll talk about that, but what was my sophomore year of college, I was taking care of I was almost a full-time caretaker until I left to go to college. Wow. So my mother started getting sicker and sicker, and as you know, I was adopted. So that's my mother. That's the only mother I ever had, right, at that point. So it was weird. You come to school and you join in, what that means is we talking, you know, you snapping on people, you being funny, you hi, you the guy that got all the friends, you always smiling. But behind the scenes, man, I was like, man, this is the worst. Like, you know, seeing your mother go through pain that you can't take away from her as a young person has stuck with me so long. I still have many nightmares about, to this day, I still have for some of the things I used to see.
You know, it is interesting how you went through a period of your life where you pretty much were living a double life. You was in one place, but your mom was in another place, and you have to deal with that until you could come to some sort of resolution, you know, internally, where you can, you know, deal with the realities of what's going on in your life. I wonder out there right now, how many people, their body is in one place, but their mind is in another.
Yeah.
You know, and how is it that you were able to remedy that over the years? You said you pretty much had to deal with that. It was tough for you. What helped you to resolve those internal traumas, the issue of losing your mom?
Yeah, man, there's a few things. One of the main things was being open. I have a very strong group of friends, like very strong. We've known each other from around 7th, 8th grade, and we're the same group of friends that I had from 7th to 8th grade. Everybody was always like, that's the crazy, like the set group. We're still together. We're still on group chat talking. They're still blowing up the group chat right now. The same group. And if I didn't hang with those same 6 guys, from there, I would be in a whole different space right now, because one, my friends got me through, because we were all on the right. We had one goal. We were like, we're going to go to the NFL. We're going to go to college. We're going to go to college for free. We were from different neighborhoods. Some of those neighborhoods were rivaling. But when we all came together, everybody respected us. We would get up in the morning, work out. We would do things because we didn't have YouTube and all. We didn't know that's what you're supposed to do, but we just did it. We just worked out all the time, stayed out of trouble. You know, we got in a little kid trouble, but nothing crazy, right? No records or anything. But that group of friends that did not know what was going on at home, that only found out when my mother passed, they didn't even know she was really sick. My whole life, they didn't even know. And then they didn't even know I was adopted until about 5 years ago. But opening it up and being able to share how things felt and what I used to hide and stories, how they started coming together. Man, when just have your peers and people that love you kind of accept you and come in and be like, man, you could have told me that, you could have shared that. Man, this is how I felt. Man, this is how it makes me feel, shit with you sharing it as men, right? Yeah. That was one of the elements, being authentic and open with my story. Not saying you should just go tell anybody your story so they can weaponize it against you. But for me, you know, starting to tell my story. And also when I was asked about different elements of my background and I would share it with people I don't know, I would have other young people or people come to me on the side and pull me up and say, man, I'm going through that same thing. You got through it? How? And that started really giving me the inspiration to continue to open up and share more elements of my background. So that I didn't have to be embarrassed about.
That's right. That's 100% correct. You didn't ask, you know, you didn't ask for your life to turn out the way that it turned out. You obviously committed to making the best of your life, but you didn't create your own life. Your life was given to you, and you made the best of it. So it's definitely nothing to be ashamed about. Exactly. But I want to talk a little bit about the value of expressing yourself. When you began to share your story or share your perspective, open up about what was going on in your life, did that relieve anxiety for you? Did it enable you to take more control and authority in your life?
Man, not only did it relieve anxiety and allow me to take more control, but it made my life worth it, if that makes any sense.
Wow. Hold on. This is a moment where you connect with so many thousands of people right now.
Yeah.
When you say that when you shared your story, it made your life worth it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the comment of the first segment of the show. When he shared his life story, it made his life worth it. Think about that, y'all. Are you figuring out where the value is in your life? Are you wondering where is the worth? Where is the value? And if your bank account doesn't have $1 million in it, okay, you can't check that box off. You don't got bars of gold under your mattress, you can't check that box off. But have you shared your story?
Man, your story is you.
How does
authentic.
How does the value of your life grow when you share your story? You said yourself, Christian, that when you shared your story, it made your life worth it. And so now I look out onto the community and I think, as we look for value in things, in materials, in society, we go up, down, left, right, crisscross, looking for value. What about the value of sharing your story? What about your life being valued? What about your life's value becoming known to you? How does our world change when you realize that your life is valuable and you unlock that by sharing your story? Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Christian Benjamin today. This man is wise. He's had firsthand experience and he's an overcomer. We're going to be right back with more from him after this brief message. Don't go anywhere. America's Next Motivator. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator. Hosted by me, Cedric Riley, and sponsored by the Pride Empowerment Network and our viewership. And we're back. Hey, Christian, how you feeling out there?
Man, I'm feeling great, man. It's a good night, man. I'm sitting here with you talking about life, love, motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So when you started sharing your story, what did that look like? Did you start doing speaking engagements? Were you going with your father? How did that look when you started sharing your story? Talk to me.
So really, when I first shared my personal story, not something entrepreneur wise or anything, like with my background and the death of my mother and how that made me feel and different things like that. I remember one of my old teammates asked me to come speak. And something about speaking that I do want to say is I have a kind of a motto that I play on myself. Ethos is when somebody asks you to come speak, they see something in you. When they ask you to come speak to some people that you know they care about, so they asked me to come talk to a school. At that point, I had never done anything like that. And the people I was on the stage with were like celebrities. So I was like, man, I'm about to be embarrassed. Because knowing how I was in high school, knowing how you in high school, it's like, man, I'm about to go to this high school. They were like, get that guy off the stage. Like, you know, get him off the stage. Who is he? He on the stage with these two other celebrity guys, right? So I'm up there, I'm listening to them talk. I'm like, man, this is terrible. Why did I even agree to do this? So then when the mic came to me, I just told the whole story about how I felt when my mother passed and how I got through it. And what I struggled with and what I came to be just flowed out of me. Man, I'll never forget that day for the rest of my life. When I stepped off the stage and everything was over, almost the entire student body was surrounding around me. The two guys was there that I've been watching on TV and they were surrounded. You know, all the high school students. Can I talk to you? Can I talk? Can I talk? Even when I talked to all these kids, when everybody got out the auditorium, there was one kid who waited for everybody to leave. They said, man, can I talk to you one-on-one because I wanted to wait for everybody to leave. man, I was in foster care. I lost my brother. He committed suicide. He told me his whole story. And I was sitting there like, this is crazy, because these people who I thought had all the money and all the fame and all these things were they were more important to me because of what they had. But I just opened up to what happened to me and who I was and what I became. And these students right here are resonated with it to the point where they're standing in an auditorium to get a glimpse and talk to me and find out more and let me give them a word of encouragement. That moment right there changed my life.
You know, we're talking about sharing our stories and how that brings people together. I've been reading some articles lately, and I've been listening to some things that are really communicating that we've got to realize the power that's in the whole. We have to realize the power of us as a collective. We are more of a force, more of a power source together than we are individually.
Yeah.
And what I was reading was a particular philosophy of a scientist. This scientist believes that one cell by itself is as good as dead. But when all your cells are together, then it's a powerhouse in motion.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's his belief, and he's working to prove that. But I look at that and I look at us, right? I look at us as humanity, and I say, what if that theory were true for us? What if me by myself, just on an island, I'm as good as dead? But when I begin to unite with my brothers and sisters, my community members, then I'm a member of a powerhouse. Now we are a moving caravan, like the scripture talks about.
Absolutely.
You know,
I truly believe that. You know, it's something that what really eggs me on to do these sort of things, go still talk to youth, go to juvenile detention centers. I always tell people, man, I don't have a nonprofit. I'm just latching on to whoever has one, and I get invited to go do. I actually don't have one of my own, but I will forever. I don't need have my own organization. I will forever help young people, because this is my thing. All the stories that you hear about my upbringing and my life, and the things where I faltered, the near misses, all those things. There was somebody in my life that kind of steered me on the right path, or got me going, or took me in, or kept me from that struggle, or saved my life, right? Without one of those instances, I wouldn't be here today, right? So when I see a young person incarcerated or in a shelter or something like that, I'm like, man, you know what? That kid could have created the next Instagram. That kid could have cured cancer. But everybody's walking past him like, you know, hey, they don't matter. And I'm like, man, you know, if I tell my story and share it with them and sit down with them, they might be inspired to do things 50 million times greater than what I've ever done. And that's what really drives me. I'm like, every kid, every young person out there has the potential to do amazing things. They just have to believe it. That's not cliche. The smartest people I've ever met in my life are the young kids that look like me, that are growing up, that have the same struggles and don't believe in themselves. And it's really in me for them to see themselves higher than what they could possibly imagine at the moment.
That's right. Don't ever forget about the untapped potential in our communities. Don't ever let it be cliche that a young man or a young woman needs to hear you tell them that they can be whatever they decide to be. And when I say whatever, I mean if there are roadblocks or if there are political ropes in your way, use your imagination. Put it down on paper. Get people around that piece of paper and manifest it anyway, is what I'm saying. Now let's talk to you know, the grown folks, the adults in the room, about what you were able to do as a young adult and as a man today. Did you go to college?
Yeah, Bowie State University. I went to another school first, a junior college in North Carolina, and I got kicked out of that school. I was a 0 point whatever student with no credits. And this is the crazy thing about that. I went to college. I didn't even know what my student card was supposed to do. I didn't have friends that were in college. Like my peers that we played sports, we all went to college the same year. So I didn't know. It sounds like rudimentary. This stuff that people say is common knowledge ain't so common everywhere. So I didn't even know your card that you use to swipe to get food and pay for your books. I didn't even know what that was for. I was just up there in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, nothing but people that don't look like me. And I was like out of my element again. But now I'm 17, 18. That was a crazy experience. I was walking in there. I remember my professor asked me, could he touch my hair? And a professor asked me, stop class. He said, can I ask you a question? I forget, it was like some psychology class that we were debating. And I said he could ask it because I knew where it was going. I can't remember why I knew, but I knew what the question kind of was. But it was basically, why can't white people say the N-word if they have a black friend? Like, that's the type of school, that's where I was. I was just a token, not token, but more so like I was the first black person or some of my teammates that a lot of people saw. If you were black, you played football or basketball at that school. Right. So I got that. I lasted 1 year there, came back home. Man, I was working all types of jobs. I still have PTSD from some of those jobs. You know, stocking shelves at 3 a.m. at Home Depot. Man, I was stocking shelves 3 years. I was watching my kids.
First of all, I like how you say this particular environment is not the best for me, and I'm out. I like that about you, and I think, I think that that's a great instinct. I think that more of us need to have that instinct to say, I need to go where I can thrive a little bit better, a little bit differently than I would be able to thrive here. Your audacity to move, because they say movement is medicine. Your audacity to move is what's gotten you to this point right here. Talk about that in between phase where you're probably 20 something and you're not working your ideal career. You know, everything is not ideal for you, and you know, but you were a star. But it's those years where you grind and you actually developing the real content of your character in that decade. Talk to me about what you learned from working those jobs, whether it be Home Depot or wherever else.
Those were the most important years of my adult life.
That's right.
Right. All this stuff now is easy compared to what I was doing there. But I wouldn't know that I could get through any circumstance, any struggle in what I'm doing now if I didn't go through that. What I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel at the time. But I'm working, you know, like I said, I'm working stocking shelves at 4 a.m. I remember being so not so much down on myself, but just like, man, my entire job for 2 years has been to get carts out of a parking lot. I know I'm smarter than this. Yeah, that was my job at a grocery store, is to get this shit. Make sure you scoop all them carts up. You better bring them back on time. And I'm 20 years old, 19, 20, just like my entire existence revolves around getting carts out of a parking lot. There's got to be something better than this.
Right.
But I used to apply to a lot of different colleges every year, and I would get turned down because they didn't have my grades from high school. Remember, I said I had bad grades, and then me leaving that school early, I would never get in year after year. And I remember I would just sit there and be like, man, I'm just gonna like wilter away. You know what I mean? I remember my mother used to always say, man, you're gonna get back into school, you're gonna play ball again. I'm gonna be at your first game screaming for you. This and that. She would always say that. And I would just be like, man, I would apply every year. And then it wasn't my last, but the year I applied to Bowie State at HBCU in PG County, one of the oldest historically black colleges. I applied, and then I worked out with the football team and worked out with them the whole summer. And at the end of the summer, it was like, you know what? You're actually not in college yet, so you need to go to the admissions office. And that was like the longest walk. It was like walking to a prison yard, and so I was so nervous. I went to the admissions office. I sat down, and this is going to tie together. It's funny because it's about telling your story. I sat down with the admissions officer, and I just told him, man, I know my grades and the numbers and stuff don't look like this, but this is why I want to be in school. And I told him about my life. I said, man, I would be the hardest working person ever. I would do whatever you ask. I just want to be in college. I'll never forget. He sat there, he leaned back, and he said, man, you know what? This paperwork, I actually wouldn't be able to get you in here, but you told me this story. You're in college now. That's it. You're done. You're in school.
Wow.
Man,
because you told your story.
Because I told my story. Right. Man, that was my first adult tear. You know that adult tear when you look at you walk outside, you just like
your pursuit of happiness moment.
Joy. Yeah. I was like, what? This is crazy. Like, I'm in college. Which on two instances, one, telling your story, it can take you anywhere if you really mean it and you really want something, you're gonna go get it. I truly believe that whatever you really want, you're gonna get.
That's right.
Like if you aren't working hard for something and you don't have anything, you're gonna have what you're showing for that, right? Which is not gonna be too much, you know. And you can work very hard and not have monetary things to show, but you dang sure gonna have discipline, work ethic. Somebody's gonna spot you and be like, man, that guy standing up and getting here early and coming and leaving late. That guy's a star. I want to bring him up. I want to teach him something. He reminds me of the next me. I got a lot of that too. So I don't want to make it like I'm a, and then I got a lot of that from people that don't look like me as well. And that's something I learned about life too. So I tell people, man, don't just shun people because they look different from you. Some of the people that's pushed me the furthest in my career are people that look nothing like me and have no cultural similarities at all. But they saw something in me and said, man, I want to help you. Man, you remind me, man, you know what, come this way. So it became like, man, when you're yourself and you're working hard, that's a universal language. When you want to be great, greatness is a universal language. And people will spot that and put you in position over everybody else without you having the monetary things or the resume or anything like that. I never had the resume on paper to be in any room I'm in. But guess what? I'm there.
That's right. You know, there are stars among us. And we have to really begin to have some conversations around consciousness, what consciousness is, because I see that a lot of young people, they have a different type of consciousness, and that age from 20 to 30, or what I guess you could say from 18 to 30, where it's supposed to be college and then a career and then you're an adult. There is another experience that needs to happen in that time frame, and I think some of us are going out there trying to get that missing experience, because you're just not ready to settle down into a career yet. You want to go through one more obstacle course. It's almost like you're trying to turn into an adult, but you're not quite there yet, and so you need like one more experience, and so. I think we should have more conversations about there being another experience. Like I feel there needs to be an experience either in addition to college or between high school and college, because you're on the brink, but you've got one more phase to go, like before you're really an adult. And I think that, like you said, you learned so much when you were doing those jobs in between, when you were working at, this store or, pulling carts or something like that. Like that whole 10-year gap where you're like, yo, I'm a star, but I'm in this parking lot pulling carts. What if that could be replaced by an actual program that knows, you need one more rites of passage? I just think that could be a missing link filled in.
Man, patience is the key. When you work hard and you're doing the right things and you being a good person, because that's another thing I don't want to skip over. You got to be a good person, because a lot of the rooms, personally, anecdotally, that I was put into, people also liked me. They would say, man, I'm helping that kid out because he's pretty cool and he worked hard, and they would bring you in. It had nothing to do with the paperwork. But what you're saying with the story in between, there's a lot of perseverance there. And when you persevere throughout these things, you start to learn. Remember, I went back to school after those 3 years of sitting around. When I became 20, when I was about 21 years old, I go back to school after being in what we call the real world. I had a different relationship with school. I'm like, I'm a 4.0 student. I'm on the dean's list because I'm like, school, this life is a breeze compared to what's out there. Let me get this going. Let me rock this out. And and then the thing that, and this is how God works. If I was able to just go to school straight out of high school and spend my 3 or 4 years and graduate, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. I had to meet people at Bowie State that introduced me to jobs that I never knew existed. I didn't know you could use your art and and make a job out of it. I never heard of that in my life. I didn't know that you could be a designer, a creative director. It was until an elective I took at Bowie State in the year 2003, 2004, that I was like, you can do this? And then they brought a guy in that looked like me that designed for Nike. That changed my life. I started because that became my whole life, which is still what I do today, creative director, entrepreneur. That came from that, but it didn't happen when I would have expected it. I wouldn't have had that job. I would have just went to school, took whatever course that maybe would have got me made. You know, you pick a course based on the earning potential and been out of there. But now I'm living my dream. Even when times are tough, the job I have is my passion. It's what I want to do. You know what I mean? That's tough.
Talk to me about the work you do today. What do you do today?
So my main job, as I like to say, my quote unquote 9 to 5, is I own a creative agency called Story Marketing. So what we do is we work with a lot of organizations and brands. There used to be a typical creative agency where creative agencies, companies come and say, hey, we want to film a commercial, or we want to do we need some digital work or some tech or an app build or something like that. Everything in the creative world. We kind of swapped it around though. We say what we do is to help brands reach people of color better, because what they do is when you remember like the commercial that Kylie Jenner, it was Kendall Jenner with the Pepsi in Black Lives Matter that fell on deaf ears. It was a real bad commercial. People knocked it. You know, or Gucci doing the thing with the kid, the caricature of the African American kid or something. Brands don't have a direct link to the communities to try to market to. So they were bringing an organization, a company like ourselves, to create actual things that matter and mean something. One of our biggest projects was with the White House. We did My Brother's Keeper when Obama was in the White House, helped them push that out there. But what we do now, we took the agency part of it, and now we do workshops where we actually go into companies and brands and teach them how to communicate better with diverse background, people of color, people with different sexual orientations. Like, man, you're in a vacuum, because when you go to these companies, especially these organizations, they may mean well, but when you look at the upper leadership, they don't look nothing like us, but they're trying to market to Black and brown.
This is huge. This is absolutely huge. You teach agencies how to communicate with African Americans. All the while I've been listening to your story today, listening to your perspectives today, the light bulb that's going off in my head is that America needs to understand African Americans more. They need more knowledge and education about who we are and how we work, how we operate, how we think. We are a multi-trillion-dollar economy. We are one of the richest economies on planet Earth, just African Americans in America. And America's ability to communicate with us, it has to be enhanced 10 times over.
Yeah.
And so you standing in the gap to say, not only am I sharing my story with my community, modeling good behaviors for my friends and family, but I'm actually going into corporations and showing them through workshops how to communicate with the African-American consumer is work that is changing the face of America. I love how you were able to work with Barack Obama. Talk to me about more. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing, because it's not just about them increasing their sales. If it's just that, we won't take on the project. You actually have to do things for the community that actually push it forward. If you're going to market, and Gen Z, I'll give Gen Z credit a lot. Gen Z gets a lot of knock for being on TikTok and these things. But guess what? They buy based on their value system. Man, if Nike sided with Trump, they're going to stop wearing Nikes. This is the first generation to start to have the awareness to buy based off their value system.
In an instant.
So these companies, they can't just do when I was growing up, and maybe when you was growing up, we remember what McDonald's would do is they had Black McDonald's commercial on BET with Calvin. They wouldn't show it on NBC, but when you're on BET, they put some rap music on and talk about getting a job at McDonald's. That's all they did to market to Black people, was put Black commercials. But now it's bigger than that. You got to have some place in there. If you're going to say we stand with Colin Kaepernick or kneel with Colin Kaepernick, you also got to donate to the organization that he's a part of, right? And so we create those narratives too. Like, hey, you can't just put on social media, we support, George Floyd. You got to actually do something within your organization so the public can see it. So, hey, we're helping you increase your ROI, but you also helping the community that you're trying to sell to or push your organization. Because a lot of our clients are also nonprofit organizations.
This is huge. You actually, man, you're literally making America a better place.
Man, piece by piece, just one of a cog of many people that's doing it.
100%. You know, that's the movement. That is the way that the world is changing right now. Into what is inclusion? Where does it end? Does it ever end? How do we continue to be inclusive of one another? And so we're making that turn around a corner where we're learning how to weave, a better society. And that's the direction that we're going in. We want to be in good relationships with people that don't look like us. We want to be able to have a good time at the park. We want to ride bikes and run and coexist effectively. And so, yes, shout out to everybody who's doing the work of making America a better place by showing people how to communicate and how to serve one another. There is a way, a specific way to serve one another. So shout out to all the people who decide to stand in the gap and do that work.
Absolutely.
You mentioned in your biographies that you were an alchemist. What did you mean by that?
Man, one of my favorite book of all time, outside of the Bible, of course, is The Alchemist. And The Alchemist is basically a story about a young kid who wants to become, great, but he goes through a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of learning. And what alchemy is, alchemy is something that quote unquote existed in the world. It was always a theory that you could create. There was a science that people were trying to find in the early days where they were using other elements to create precious gold and precious metal. Like they thought, we could dump this into a pot. Somehow somebody had the key that if you could create this a special way, you can create gold, which is the highest, the best product, the best thing that existed in the ancient times, right? Nobody really legitimately has, like, it's not on paper that somebody found, well, it was an actual alchemist, but there were a lot of people who said they were alchemists around the world, and people used to study it. Now there's no written record of somebody actually doing it, but that's what an alchemist is, right? I always took that word and ran with it because I said, you know what? That's what we're doing with our lives. We taking all these little elements of things that may be harmful or we thought didn't help us, or, I'm pushing carts over here. I'm going to this school over here. I'm dealing with this trauma over here, but it's making me who I am today. We're gold. Our lives really mean something. I'm an alchemist. I turn non decent elements into gold. So that's why I always use the word, like, I'm an actual alchemist. You're an alchemist. Like, you turned your life into gold. Your life is worth something. It's a precious metal.
That's right.
But it was made from non-precious metals.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Everybody take note of this concept right here, that you are an alchemist. You have the potential to rearrange the chemical composition of your body, the thoughts. They say, and it's a fact that your thoughts are chemicals. And so you have the power to rearrange the chemical makeup of your body, and then your influence on the person next to you changes, and then your world changes because you're redoing the chemicals in your body, and then you're changing the influence that you have on your peers, and then you're changing the world. And so that's spiritual alchemy. Consider that. As we switch gears a little bit, May is Foster Care Awareness Month. It's a Foster Care Awareness Month. What do you say today about foster care, where it stands and where it needs to go?
So my personal experience, every experience is unique, but like I said, when I was adopted at 2 days old, my mother said there was something about me special. I was wrapped in her favorite color. She had to keep me. She was a foster parent. So what we did, I grew up in a foster home. We ended up raising or having over 30 babies in my time that we raised from either 1 month to 5 years. So I grew up in a home that was normal to me, like a home full of babies and children and different things. So and we adopted my younger brother, who's 3 years younger than me, was adopted. My sister was a natural birth. So I grew up with a brother and a sister in a foster home, right? And we were very loved. It was amazing. My father's my father, my mother's my mother, who unfortunately passed away about 16 years ago at this point. So, the home I grew up in, it wasn't about, when I became an adult and became open with my story, I learned a lot of people's story isn't like that, right? Some people's foster parents or caretakers were there just for the money, right? Okay. And they didn't have a relationship with their parents. And so I have a relationship with them, and I have a relationship now with my birth parents, who are both still alive, who I just met within the past. My mother about 8 years ago, and my birth father about 3 years ago, right? And we actually have a relationship. That's not everybody's story, but at the end of the day, I've learned so much from sharing my story and being able to talk to people about their personal backgrounds. The main thing that really sticks with me, and if we're talking about foster care, we're talking about people who are currently in the system, I would say, is that love factor. That's something that needs to be looked into. Like the foster parents, the ones that are taking these children in, what are their real motives? You know what I mean? What's their motives behind it? Because I'm running into a lot of adults who grew up with trauma based on the homes they were placed into.
That's
you know
right.
What I mean, the lack of love, the lack of places. I didn't. So there's always privilege. I have a theory that everybody's privileged in some way. You have to notice it, right? That's right. So for myself, like, I have a place to go back to for Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's my family. Like, that's my family. I go to my family's place for that. We get together. So I was, a couple years ago where I found out there's some people that they grew up in a foster home and they don't go back. So they don't have a place to go back to. A simple thing like where do you go for Christmas is
Right.
is a traumatic experience that I didn't experience. So those things like that bothers me. And I think that if there was a way to maybe I'm not interested. I don't have a deep knowledge of the system per se, but I can say if there's a way to vet these parents better, where you don't have these parents that are abusing the kids, not just physically abusing the kids. I think that's easy to catch, even though it does happen. But there's mental abuse.
That's right.
Where they don't, where you know when you don't feel love, you know when you're in a toxic relationship. You got a toxic relationship with your caretakers, right? So, you know, I think that's something that I've noticed from adults, but I know it's happening to kids right now.
Okay. We are down to the final 30 seconds of the show. Everybody out there, get your crown emojis ready. Get your crown emojis ready. We are down to the final 30 seconds of the show. I got a few questions for you. The first, what is survival to you?
Survival to me is making it happen no matter what. You know what I mean? Right. Like you know that classic statement about when you're drowning, you're gonna find a way to get up on the water. Man, life, man, there's a lot of times you're gonna feel like you're drowning. There's a lot of things. You're not really drowning. They're just bad instances that's happening in your life at the moment.
That's right.
But getting through that's survival. Pushing through, finding a way, going past your emotions and driving into your physical self, that's survival.
What is success to you?
Success to me is living the life that you decided you want to live, not the life that you saw somebody else live, that you wish you could, hey, I wish I could be wealthy like this, or I wish I could have no. When you define who you really are and your purpose on life, and then you start living that, you're a successful person.
10 seconds left in the show. What is greatness to you?
Greatness to me is being your best self. I truly believe when you're your best self, you walk in a room and you are authentic. You're not changing for anybody else, and you're good, and you're always learning and studying to be a better version of yourself, a better person who can affect the world in a greater way. And you're great.
Absolutely. Christian Benjamin, I want to let you know I've listened to your story today. I love the way that you took control of your life. You turned, you went up, you went down, you took it all, you learned, you processed it into a better thing. I'm giving you respect today while you're still alive to receive it. I'm giving you your crown today. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, put your crown emojis into the chat. We are letting you know, letting the world know that you, Christian Benjamin, you are America's next motivator.
Appreciate you, Sid. This is a beautiful experience.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for stopping by today, all right?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Each and every episode of America's Next Motivator is going to have something here for you. All you got to do, just like you did today, stop by and pick it up.